This is probably the game of the year in the Pac-12, at least to this point, maybe for the entirety of the season. We'll see, but Oregon is going to Washington. College game day is going to be there. Washington favored by 2.5 points, 3:30 Eastern on ABC. This game's got a couple of names to it. My favorite being the Cascade Clash. Nice little alliteration there. You also got the Border War. That's a good one, too. Bottom line, these teams don't like each other. It's a rivalry game. It's why we love college football. It's the passion on both the positive and negative side of things. A lot to play for right here. Both pole position in the Pac-12 conference, kind of establishing themselves as the big dog, no pun intended for Washington, or the big duck if you're Oregon. And quite frankly, it is pole position when it comes to the college football playoff race. I think either one of these teams, depending on how it looks, a win would send a tremendous message to the rest of the college football landscape about what the Pac-12 is going to bring when it comes to that conversation. USC's in the mix too. We'll predict their game here in just a minute. But bottom line, a lot to play for. We're about to make our pick. Before we do, though, make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. College football, only college football. If you're listening on podcast, we love and we appreciate you. Apple and Spotify is where you can get it. If you're watching live, you're one of us. You're a part of the program. We're live Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. There's a chance, though, that you're watching this prediction from a one-off video that you found on YouTube. Probably anywhere from like 8 to 14 minutes, depending on how long this prediction goes. Make sure you're subscribed so you can be dialed in for the live portions of this show. Full hour long. We get in the live chat. We have a good time. We just talk ball, man. You love ball. We love ball. We don't do all that extra high fructose corn syrup or additives or agendas, whatever. Like, it's ball and only ball. Would love to have you a part of this. Best way to be a part of this is making sure you're subscribed and tuning into the live show. So we appreciate y'all in advance for that. Let's get to this game now, man. For Oregon, I think Oregon feels a little bit disrespected. I think they got a little bit of an edge to them. And it's not so much because people are favoring Washington in this football game by 2.5 points. I think it's just the way that we talk about the Pac-12 conference as a whole. I think people are enamored with Washington, and rightly so. Michael Penix Jr. been doing numbers like Goodwill Hunting, dealing the pill like a shady pharmacist. Every single phrase you want to throw at it. Dude has been balling. The Washington offense has got more weapons than the military. Like, they have been putting up numbers. I mean, I think they were leading the country in terms of total yards. They were top 2 in the country in terms of points scored a game. They might be leading in both those categories. Bottom line, they're electric. But there's Oregon, just kind of chugging along, throttling Colorado and talking about how they're in it for wins and not for clicks. And we were big stands of that on this show, if you follow us for any length of time. They feel a little bit disrespected, is my humble opinion. This is a game with the rivalry edge where they've been waiting to run this one back from last year. Because last year, Oregon, I think a lot of people in Eugene would tell you they had this game won. Bo Nix goes down, things turn out how they turn out, and they end up not even getting the chance to kick a field goal to try and to tie the game. They just ended up losing the football game. And it ended on like a Hail Mary, and Bo Nix wasn't healthy. Like, overall, just textbook bad deal for Oregon. They're looking for revenge in this game, looking to make a statement to the rest of the college football world that you got to talk about Oregon when it comes to the West Coast and talking about the Pac-12 having a shot at the college football playoff. Now, like I just said with Washington, though, on the other side of things, the time for them is now. The time is now. If you're going to make a college football playoff push, this is the time to do it. Michael Penix, he's here for a good time and not a long time. He's been there for a long time, rather, in college football by way of Indiana, but this is it for him. This is the last rodeo for number 9. And you got all these weapons for him, like we already talked about. Rome Odunze, Polk, McMillan. Like, they got dogs. No pun intended. They got dogs. Can they capitalize on it this season? Can this be the year where you make good on all that talent on your roster? It starts in a game like this. This is the game where I think both teams kind of remove all the talking about either side, all the talking about, well, Oregon could be in that college football playoff conversation. Washington could be in that college football playoff conversation. The knock on both teams has been, well, who have they played? Yeah, Oregon played Colorado, but we've kind of started to see more and more what Colorado doesn't have under the hood. Who have they played? Well, you beat either team. Talk about a quality win for the resume. I think it would be exactly that. Big matchup in this game. Probably the biggest matchup of this game, if we're being real. The Oregon secondary against the Washington Monstars at wide receiver. In this game a season ago, Oregon had their issues in the secondary. Michael Penix went for over 4 bills. 400 yards passing. That is ridiculous. Washington is a team that wants to get into rhythm. They want to work some of that quick game, work the perimeter a little bit, and then they want to launch missiles by way of Michael Penix and his throwing arm. The thing for Oregon is, can you just keep a lid on that deep pass game? That's like the big battle going on between that. The factors within Oregon being able to play the pass game effectively against Washington is, can Oregon sort out the scheme of Washington? Because they do a lot with pre-snap movement. They do a lot with the layering and putting pressure on safeties and forcing them to pick a deep route to cover and then throwing to whoever they don't cover. Like, they do a tremendous job scheming it up. Is Oregon able to be able to sort that out? Is Oregon able to be on their P's and Q's and not have this big reset moment right before the snap and have this issue where they're sorting things out mid-play on the back end? And then, well, I thought you had him. Before you know it, they've scored 6 points, and we got to have a conversation on the sideline. Can we avoid that kind of scenario? The other part of this for Oregon, can the linebackers be serviceable in the pass game? And if you watch last year's tape, it's a different group for Oregon in that second level of the defense. But Michael Penix Jr. just did whatever he wanted in the intermediate pass game. Like, there was more windows than a New York skyscraper for him to throw to. Like, it was unbelievable the way that they would stretch out that linebacker, force him to cover the flats, or make him move with emotion, and then before you knew it, pass right by your ear to Rome Odunze or whoever you want to talk about for Washington catching the football. If they can make those windows close up a little bit quicker, or heck, if they can even bait Michael Penix into throwing a couple passes he doesn't want to throw and get their paws on the football and tip it up in the air, turnover for Oregon, good things going for the Ducks, like, that would be the way that you want to live. But I think for Oregon, like, the key really is what we talked about. Can you force Washington to nickel and dime their way down the field? Because with offenses like Washington, I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm just saying you typically don't want to do that if you're a quarterback like Michael Penix and you're accustomed to, like I said, launching just darts downfield that are big plays and they're well over the defense's head. If you're not able to get that at a certain point in the game, you start to get greedy. You start to try and press. And when you press, that's when mistakes happen. That's when it would play right into Oregon's hands. Now, if Oregon can't do that, and they have those issues we talked about a second ago where they're not great when the snap is, or excuse me, they're not great with the pre-snap movement. They're not great during the snap where they have some issues they got to sort out between man coverage or zone coverage, whatever it is. That's when big plays would happen for Washington. And then for Oregon, it's like, okay, tie them up tight, boys. Make sure those spikes are all the way dialed in because it's going to be a track meet. I think you'd like to avoid that if you're Oregon. But if you're Washington and you can put pressure on Oregon to match scores, I think that's a good way to go. Now, a key piece within this whole matchup is tackling in space for Oregon is going to be crucial. If you want to force someone to nickel and dime their way down the field, you better be able to rally to the football. If he throws a 5-yard pass, got to be a 5-yard gain. It can't be a 5-yard pass and then we struggle to tackle it for Oregon and they get a 15-yard gain out of it. Like, they've got the playmakers in that wide receiver room to do that after the catch. You can't let that be a reality if you're Oregon. That's this game plan, keeping the whole lid on the deep pass game. It sounds nice. It don't work if you don't tackle. So that's the first part of this. Now, Washington in run support against this north-south approach of the Oregon run game is going to be big. Oregon, man, if you turn on the tape, there is no sign of any soft Oregon team that used to exist in Eugene. And I'm not talking about Dan Lanning. I'm not talking about Mario Cristobal. I'm talking about the old days when you would talk about Oregon and say, yeah, well, they score a lot of points, but wait till they play Stanford. Remember Stanford when they used to be a team that was like consistently in that New Year's Six conversation? I guess at that point in time it was the BCS conversation. Like, remember that Stanford team? Oregon's not that team anymore. Oregon is now the aggressor. If you watch that tape against Colorado, and it's Colorado, mind you, so let's kind of take it with a grain of salt, Oregon was pulling right, pulling left, run power this way, run power that way, move your defensive line 4 yards downfield. Like, it did not matter. That was how they got down at Oregon, and that's how they've gotten down so far with Dan Lanning running the show. And I think that's going to be the same approach for them this season. I think it's going to be the same approach in this game. And when you're able to get downhill, when you're able to have success doing that, everything else opens up within this offense, because what it would force Washington to do is to pack it in the box. Well, at that point, then we can throw the bubble. We can get some more numbers on the perimeter. We can mess with your safeties. We can take some more deep shots. Like everything for Oregon starts going north-south in that running game. Now for Washington, they have a very quick trigger at the linebacker position. Like the thing that you love and also maybe don't love if you're a Washington fan is the way that your linebackers take swings. Like if they see a guard pull or they see their key do a certain thing, like there's no waiting, there's no second guessing there. We are getting to the football right now if we're Washington defensively. And again, you might love that because it could create a fair amount of negative plays for the offense. And it does when Washington's successful doing that. The concern you would have there is, like we talked about with other game breakdowns, when you swing, there's a chance you swing and miss if you don't make contact. And if you swing and miss, there's not a lot of second-level help behind you because you were the second level. And that safety's got to come down and fail. And maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Maybe he got blocked. Maybe he has something else going on with what he has to pay attention to in the pass game. So for Washington, that's going to be a very big part of this, is connecting when they do trigger. Not having this whole, we got to regroup, we got to have somebody else fill behind our linebacker because we triggered quickly and we were wrong. But if you do it effectively, you force Oregon into some more third and long, some more obvious passing situations, and you're able to mess with Bo Nix a little bit more in that sense with how exotic you want to be on the secondary, with how much you want to show pressure and not bring it. Like that's kind of a thing you got to watch for if you're Washington and how this matchup could shake out. So if Oregon is able to win that matchup, we just talked about what happened if Washington wins that matchup. You create problems for Bo Nix. If Oregon wins that matchup, everything else opens up and probably have some big run plays. But like I said, I think it leads to some big pass plays in the secondary there against Washington. So there's, when we're scripting these games, we're breaking down these games, I try and do it in bullet points, like, hey, what are the big matchups? And we got to the last bullet point here, and I was like, man, there's a lot of ways we could go with this. And I wasn't sure which we wanted to trim down, so we're just going to give you our unfiltered thoughts here. I think there's two things that I'm looking at in this game when it comes to deciding factors. Who adjusts the best? Because I think this is a game where you're week 7, you've saved some things just for Oregon, you've saved some things just for Washington. So there's going to be some things that we haven't seen on tape from either team they're going to show in this game. How do you respond? Probably take a little punch on the chin, probably wobble a little bit. Is it the knockout blow where you're just like, hey, we're down for the count? That new personnel grouping they showed us, we could not fit it correctly and we just had issues all day long for either side? Or is it a thing where you're able to adjust, steady the ship, adjust the game plan? Let's go a few more rounds. Other part of this, other question I have, which quarterback meets the moment? This is a game, rivalry game, playoff implications, conference championship implications, where your best player, your quarterback, whether it's Michael Penix Jr. for Washington or Bo Nix for Oregon, you have to be at your best. There is no way around it. It's the kind of game where you're the differentiator. And being the differentiator can be summed up in a couple of things. Be the catalyst for the offense, be the catalyst for your team as a whole, be the thermostat, set the temperature competitively for your team, set the standard. Hey, Bo Nix, he's running over linebackers. Hey, Michael Penix, he's running for 30-yard gains and he's throwing touchdowns. Like everybody's rising to his level that he's setting for this team. You're the playmaker that is leading everything from an offensive standpoint, but also just setting the tone, like we were talking about. The other part of this is you keep from making that big mistake. We're not talking about Bo Nix throwing the game, losing interception. We're not talking about Michael Penix Jr. having a strip sack to lose the game because he was too slow to get rid of the football. Which quarterback meets the moment? I think whoever has, it may not be a stat line thing. I think it'll be a timely thing. It might be that final drive for either quarterback making the big play to win the game. But that's something that I think will ultimately determine the game. So when it comes down to our pick in this game, I think it'll be a battle in the perimeter for both teams for the obvious reasons that Washington wants to throw the ball around the yard. Oregon wants to do a lot of movement and get the ball out to the perimeter offensively, and it'll be a battle for both sides defensively on that side. I think Oregon is the more physical team. And we've said that for a minute here. We've taken some heat not being on the Washington train right away. Now, if Washington wins this game, sign us up, get us a seat on that train. But I think Oregon being the more physical team will control the game, will open more things up for Bo Nix. I don't know if we see Oregon slow it down, but I just think that the way they play on the line of scrimmage will be the difference maker. And I think Oregon's edge that they've had all season long will show itself in this game. I like Washington, but I just have concerns about their defense. So with that being said, we like Oregon to win this football game. Close. Might come down to a last-second field goal. Final score for us in Seattle. The Ducks get it done, 34-31. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.